of the Littleton Planning Commission. Could we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Kruger?
Present.
Commissioner Graham?
Here.
Commissioner Stallman?
Here.
Commissioner Rudnicki?
Here.
Commissioner Bolt?
Here.
Commissioner Corbett?
Here.
And Commissioner Breidenbaugh.
Here.
Did I say it right? All right.
Want to catch our alternates?
Oh, I'm sorry. Robin Schwartzbacher
here.
and Jason Reynolds.
Here. Thank you. We do have a full house tonight. Let's see. Approval of agenda. Is there any changes to the agenda that you have before you? Seeing none, we move on. Minutes to be approved. We've all had a chance to religiously watch the video and read the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Very difficult.
I was going to read it.
Any discussion? Please vote. Okay.
Commissioner Corbett.
I was not here, so I'm
Not here.
abstaining.
You didn't watch the video?
Commissioner Kruger didn't vote either.
If he didn't watch the video, he doesn't vote then.
Okay, the vote is 6 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Next item is public comment. Do we have any speakers that want to address an item that's not on tonight's agenda? Okay. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. We wish you to be civil. Like I say, the 3-minute time per speaker. The recording secretary will hold up a yellow card to indicate that 30 seconds remain, and will hold up a red card to indicate that time is up. Please give your name, address, or your district number. We have one speaker that signed up, Pam Chadbourne.
My name is Pam Chadbourne. I live a block and a half from here. And what I wanted to talk about is the quasi-judicial process and the necessity of the board members to receive, the commission members to receive adequate information to make a quasi-judicial decision. And partly my alarm about this has grown since I attended the Board of Adjustment meeting last Thursday, in which, to me, the information that was given to the authority to decide the appeal was woefully inadequate to represent the interests of the city. Now, there were 2 lawyers, and I appreciate that we have new legal counsel who have brought clarity to what's required in terms of legality of decision-making. So there were 2 lawyers, as explained before, to prevent a conflict between the interests of the staff and the Board of Adjustment. And that's good as far as it goes. It's necessary, but not sufficient. So what happened in the staff presentation was really just a reliance on what the lawyer had provided in terms of language in some code in the PD. This was for a South Park car storage, which should be shielded from view. And the staff had rendered that decision. The applicant appealed that. And unfortunately, and I think against the city's interests, the board decided to waive or reverse the staff's decision. And I'm going to say I think that's because the staff's presentation failed to present the reason for the zoning and the benefits of the current zoning. And that is what is required from staff to you and all quasi-judicial decision makers. It's not an iteration of the applicant's material. It is not making the applicant's case. It is presenting the city's case, and that has to do with our current land use and our current code and our current maps. There are reasons for that, and I have never heard that in the 6 years that I've been listening to these presentations. Staff needs to bring an understanding of our current land use and why it exists, how it functions, what benefits it provides to the neighbors and the community. That's what staff needs to bring to you. And as a citizen, I'm calling this to your attention because when the staff does not present the case for the city, for us, then I call on you to ask for more information from that point of view and represent the city, not the applicant. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wish to address the Planning Commission on an item that's not on tonight's agenda that hasn't signed up? Seeing none, we'll move on. General business, there is no general business, so we'll go right into our two public hearings tonight. First item is PC Resolution 23-2017, a resolution for a conditional use for a public emergency communications tower located at 5334 South Prince Street. Before we start, we have a new procedure here where planning commissioners will state publicly if they visited the site at what day, and if they talked to anyone while they were visiting the site. So as for the conditional use for the communications tower, we'll go up and down the road. Did anybody visit the site?
Only that I was on the county building property for other business.
Okay, so today or?
No, that was actually on Friday.
Okay, thank you.
I see the site regularly, but no.
Okay.
Yeah, similarly, I drive down Rio Grande periodically.
Okay.
I did drive by the site today, but I didn't talk to anyone.
I drive by regularly, but no specific time or place, and I did not speak to anyone.
Okay.
I did not visit the site pertaining to this issue.
All right.
I drove by the site on Friday, didn't speak to anyone.
I visit the site regularly as I'm an employee of Arapahoe County. I attended the Board of County Commissioners meeting on Tuesday the 17th and parked near the tower. I will be recusing myself from this particular hearing as my employer is actually requesting this application, so I'll be leaving the room now.
Okay. Smoke them if you got them. We'll see you later. I did visit the site Sunday, and I spoke to no one. The reason we're doing this is we had a study session on Planning Commission legal items 101. It was first suggested that we not visit the site. I objected to that, and I think a couple others objected to the fact that we'd be the least informed people on the site or at the meeting if we don't visit the site. The suggestion was then made to have us all go visit at one time, bus provided by the city. That was not practical. So this is the compromise where we say out loud if we visited the site and if we talked to anyone. So we'll now have the staff report, please.
Good evening, Planning Commission. I'm Andrea Mimno of the Planning Staff. And tonight, the presentation, public hearing, is on an application submitted by Arapahoe County for an emergency communication tower. The applicant specifically is requesting a 180-foot tall tower. It'll be used for public safety emergency communication, and it would replace the existing tower on the site. The location is 5334 Prince Street. The property is adjacent to this property here across from West Crestview Street. And here we have it on the zoning map. You can see it highlighted in pink. That is the Arapahoe County site. And you can also see it zoned I-2 with a PDO on it. I've provided a aerial photograph on the left there, and it shows you the specific location where, with the red star, where that tower would be located. And on the right side, you can see the existing tower as it appears from West Crestview Street. We had a request today from one of the commissioners. There were several questions, and one of them was, can a map be provided that shows the zoning and land use within 500 feet of the proposed location of the site. In fact, this is an item that should be included with the application. And so this afternoon, I did put this map together for you, and I put copies on each of your desks for you to see. There's also copies up front for the public to see. And so I just wanted to point this out quickly on the screen here. You can see where the proposed location is with the red star, and then you can see that there are really a variety of land uses and zonings close by. There's residential, both to the north and the east, and then directly to the south is a government use. That's this building here. And then we have commercial over to the southwest, and scattered throughout here is industrial. You can see on the lower right-hand corner that that dark black line represents approximately 500 square feet. The process for the conditional use site plan is that it comes to the Planning Commission and is approved by the Planning Commission if that is the decision that you make. This is the only step in the development review process. Okay, so the applicable criteria for the conditional use, I group them into three categories. The first is the Littleton Comprehensive Plan. It meets the goals, the policies, and objectives of the citywide plan and the downtown neighborhood plan. The proposal meets the criteria of a conditional use, and the proposal also meets the standards, all the standards found in the wireless communication facilities standards. Okay, with respect to the project details, the tower is known in the code as defined under the category of a wireless communication facility. The abbreviation is a WCF, and that's a relatively new section of the zoning code that governs these sorts of towers. Specifically, the county is proposing an 180-foot lattice tower. 3 antennas would be on the tower, not to exceed the height of 180 foot. The foundation of the tower would be partially visible due to the topography on the lot. It slopes down a little bit, so you would see a bit of the foundation on the lower end of that. And then there will be a 6-foot fence topped with barbed wire to help with safety. There is an ice bridge, and that's for the transmission cables that go into the building where additional equipment is located. There is a fall zone of 180-foot radius. That is shown on the plan set. Of course, the fall zone is the area in which would be impacted should the tower come down. And then upon the complete installation of the tower and its operation, the existing tower would be removed, including its foundation. Before I go on, I'd like to say that we received some comments from one of the commissioners, and I would like to I'd like to go over those with you in just a minute. Carol's going to help me out here. Thank you. These were all forwarded to you in your email this afternoon in case that you didn't have a chance to see them, and this is also for benefit of the public. The first question was that the links didn't work. The new links that we are providing as part of our new updated staff report format. I'd like to say that we will be working on that and we'll get that resolved for you. Second question is that, as you'll see in the illustrations, when the towers are shown side by side, the existing and the proposed, they're two different colors. And the question was put, well, is that reflective of what the color of the new tower would look like? And in fact, it's just a distinction made between the them and proposed to show that one is existing and one is proposed. They will have the same finish on them. The next question had to do with a sentence in the report that said that telecommunications facilities require conditional use if they are greater than 60 feet. That was my error. That was a section of the previous code that was deleted with the new ordinance. In fact, all towers require conditional use under the new code. The next question had to do with the applicable sections of code. There is a section of code under conditional use criteria that deals with radio towers. And so the question was, should this maybe be considered as part of the report? But in fact, the tower is defined as a wireless communication facility, and that is exempted from that radio tower section in the code. And so this application has been processed as a wireless communications facility, which deals with other sections of the code. And then the final question had to do with the height and size of the proposed tower. And the question was, well, if the new tower is in fact more robust than the old tower, does that mean that it is an enlargement of a non-conforming structure? And the staff's interpretation of this is that no, it's a replacement tower. Something that might actually be an expansion of the tower would be, for example, would be a second additional tower. That would be more likely what we would determine to be an expansion or an enlargement of a non-conforming use. But one tower replaced by another tower of the same height, we don't consider that to be an enlargement. Okay, so we'll get back to the report now. And what I put up here is from the report on the right, the matrix that shows the existing zoning compared to what's being proposed with the tower. The zoning is I2, that's Heavy Industrial Zone District, and it has a planned development overlay on it. Wireless communications are permitted as a conditional use in the I2 zone districts. Building setbacks are met for this application. The structure height is 180 feet. That, in fact, is the same height as the structure that exists now. And due to the fact that the PDO has overlaid this project, that height became non-conforming on the site. The I2 zone district has no height limitation. And when the PDO was approved for this site for another project entirely, for an addition to the project, it was inadvertently not realized that the tower exceeded the height that was put on for the addition in the existing building. So the tower is a non-conforming structure, but it may be continued and even replaced under the code, provided that it meets certain criteria in the code. Specifically, just to go through this quickly, a non-conforming structure may be occupied, operated, and maintained, and non-conforming structures shall not be enlarged or extended, can be enlarged or extended if all improvements are made in compliance with the applicable sections of the code. And as we'll see later in the presentation, the staff has found that this has been met. And this brings us to the section of the presentation that deals with the criteria and the staff analysis. There's 3 sections of code that apply to the application. We're looking at the conditional use legislative intent. We're looking at wireless communications facilities standards and wireless communications facilities design standards. With respect to the conditional use legislative intent, the code says that the proposed use at the size and intensity contemplated at the proposed location will provide a development that is necessary or desirable for and compatible with the neighborhood and or the community. And the existing tower has provided radio communications for various local government entities, hospitals, and first responders for several decades. The tower, at 180 feet tall, provides full coverage within the city of Littleton. The height of the tower is necessary to reach all areas of the city, and that includes valleys and other areas that are obstructed due to topography and buildings. Although the proposed replacement communication tower will be visible from various areas of the city, including the Mary Carter Greenway and Bowles Avenue, the value of the replacement tower is that it can accommodate the community's current and future needs with respect to emergency communications. It replaces an existing 180-foot tall tower and is not adding any additional impacts with respect to its visibility within the community. And then we talked about the fall zone before, and with respect to that zone, it does not include any area developed with residential uses or zoned for residential uses, and that helps to minimize the risk of injury should the tower fall down. As for the wireless communications facility standards, I've picked out a few criteria. The full analysis is in the staff report. I picked out a few that I felt were the most important, and that is A, the height and size of the proposed tower. And with respect to that, the proposed height and size of the replacement tower is the same as the existing height, 180 feet, including any antennas. However, the proposed tower will be sited further up the hill, approximately by 10 feet. The additional visual impact to the community should be minimal. B is proximity of the tower to residential structures and residential district boundaries. And as you saw on the map that I put up earlier, the closest residential structures are not immediately adjacent to the property. They are duplexes. They are in the Keys addition to Littleton, and approximately I've located on the map as 800 feet east of the proposed tower. Another close by residential development is Geneva Village, and that is approximately a little over 600 feet. So they are both well outside of the 180-foot fall zone. The third is the nature of uses on adjacent and nearby properties. And with respect to the fall zone, the 180-foot radius includes primarily property on which the tower will be located is the 11-acre Arapahoe County Administration site, and also on West Crestline Avenue right-of-way. And now we move on to the design standards. And the requirements of this section shall apply to the location and design of wireless communication facilities, provided, however, that the city may waive the requirements if it determines that the goals of this section are better served thereby. With respect to lighting, the proposed tower is not required to have a light per the FCC and will not be lighted. Number 5A is landscaping and fencing. And with respect to that, the proposed project will replace an existing tower with no impact to the amount of landscaped area already on the Arapahoe County Administration building. And D has to do with mature tree growth, and that they should be preserved to the extent possible. And here's a picture, a little bit dark here, but it shows the mature trees that are existing on the site, and as they help to screen the existing tower. And those trees will remain with the new tower. With respect to the comp plan, the application meets the goals and policies of the comp plan, and I've included this policy here. It's a connected Littleton policy. It's number 3.7. It says remain technologically current while integrating information and communication technology throughout the city. And the proposed emergency communication tower will assist Arapahoe County in providing ongoing communication technology, quality of life, and safety for the Littleton community. Staff finds that the application meets all of the criteria for approval for the tower, and staff therefore is recommending approval of the project, and that recommendation is reflected in the draft resolution that is in your packet, It is PC Resolution 23-2017. The next step after my presentation is for the applicant to speak, and we do have Liz Short here from Arapahoe County. She's the telecommunications coordinator, and I am available also for questions.
Stay here a minute. Any technical questions for staff before we move on to the applicant?
I have a question. Do we have a date of the original tower initially constructed, the 90s?
Yes. Well, you know, it's been some time. It's been many decades, and the applicant believes that it was first erected in the 1970s or 80s. Unfortunately, the city has no record of it. At that time, there was no review process required for the tower, and it just went up. And now, because it's being replaced, it does require the conditional use application that you're reviewing now.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
What is the existing range of that tower? What distance does the signal cover?
The applicant can probably speak better to that. It does, I understand, that includes all of the city of Littleton, and this being Arapahoe County, I think it may extend beyond our limits as well.
And maybe this is the applicant as well, of what kind of technologies are mounted on the tower that are presently in use?
I believe it's all radio frequency, as will the new tower be. And the antennas...
Shortwave radio, I don't know a lot about radio, but shortwave radio, radio, if we could explore that.
Okay.
That'd be helpful.
Yeah, with the applicant. Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else? One question for me. Let's see, since an error was made in the, when the addition was made several years ago that makes the tower non-conforming, is there any thought to changing the PDO to make the tower conforming?
We looked at the PDO issue and the non-conforming issue as staff, and we evaluated it, and we found that under the existing PDO, the non-conforming tower can be, in fact, be replaced. And so that was our approach with this application.
So handle it this way rather than, I assume you could go through the process of a PDO change, correct?
Yes, the county, if they decided, could go through such a process,
Okay.
and we would certainly review that as we do all applications we receive.
The tower would still require conditional use, though.
Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
There's no other questions. Thank you. We'll have a applicant presentation if they wish to make one.
Thanks, Andrea.
Is the applicant going to be making a presentation?
Hi, I'm Liz Short, Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office and Telecom Coordinator. I'm going to plug my thing in here. Everyone? I have just 3 slides. It's real quick. I wanted to give the background and just part of the process. A little background. We started this in November 2014. Wanted to add an antenna to the tower, and we thought, well, it's kind of a shaky tower, and decided to go ahead and have an analysis done on it and did and found out that it was overloaded as it standed, so we couldn't add the antenna without replacing the tower. There was no easy way or, a way to actually make it more robust and fix the tower, so it had to be replaced. So we went ahead and budgeted for it, and by the time we were able to actually start it, it was 2017, this year. Replacing the tower requires a little bit of finesse. It's a vital radio site on the statewide digital trunked radio system for the public safety community in Littleton, which, Littleton PD, Littleton Fire, South Metro Fire, the hospitals, RTD, and anybody that happens to be coming into the area for mutual aid. And so we have to build a new tower next to the old tower and have very little downtime. We've got to run new feed line, new antennas, everything. And then once that's all cut over to the new system, or the new tower cut over to the system, then we take the old tower down. It should take, a couple of weeks to do the whole thing, really. And then we're going to resod the whole area. Anything that's damaged, we'll fix. And I wanted to say a little thing about the fall zone. The new proposed tower, I'm going to do it right because Thank you.
Is that the one you're on?
Yeah, it's my last one. Okay, because the Arapahoe Admin Tower site is vital to the public safety community. Oh, no. We've already done that one. Okay, here we go, fall zone. The new proposed tower is being designed and installed as an essential communication structure and carries the same level of additional safety factor that is required for buildings such as hospitals and schools. The tower is designed not to fall during a 1,700-year storm. This, combined with the fact that the tower is being designed by and installed under the supervision of Colorado registered professional engineers, makes the possibility of tower collapse essentially zero. If in the unlikely circumstance that the tower did fall, an assessment of the site buildings and property lines shows that the debris from the structure would likely not leave the site. And there's a little picture, and it's not very easy to see, but it shows the fall zone of the tower, the area that on the north side, that's actually a parking lot. Going towards the east side it wouldn't even hit the street. And then the south side, because it's moved back a little bit from where the original tower is, it actually has a building area that would block it. Plus it has a, the ice bridge would add a little bit of stability to it. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Any questions of the applicant?
Oh, yeah, you had.
I understand emergency technologies, and at the end of the day, a lot of the times old technology is better than good technology. What modern technologies exist that don't require a tower that are equally as reliable? And could you talk about the process you went through in consideration of what to put up?
Okay, well, I can't think of anything, to be honest with you. Even if in the future when we go with the data, the wide area, I don't know if you're familiar with the data systems that are going to be coming out. They are looking at adding land mobile radio type communications to that. That's years down the road. But to be able to talk to everybody, or talk to all of law enforcement, all of fire, you really need to have that saturation of signal and radios. And that's the only way to get that is with the tower.
Is this tower a sending and receiving tower as well, or is it central to Arapahoe County's facility there?
It is a two-way radio system. So it's a digital trunked radio system. It's 700/800 megahertz. We use both. And it's just one site of the whole system. So there's this site. There's a site on Chevron, which is on I-25, and it's just out that way. I'm sorry. And there's Lookout Mountain. There's several sites that cover the whole area, and this site covers it really deeply. And it also covers Centennial, Inglewood, Sheridan. And so it's just one side of a big system.
And this tower specifically is for emergency use or also general radio communication?
It's also for local government, so your public works, and but it's all government or first responder kind of. Yeah.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Was there any analysis done on retrofitting the existing tower by adding spars and new structural elements to increase its stability that would allow it to take additional load without replacement?
Yeah, we did look at that. We looked at it briefly. It's such an old tower that there were members, bolts missing, things that, and also just the width of it at the top would have to be reinforced or actually rebuilt. And there was just no reasonable way to do it or cost-effective way to do it so that it would pass standards.
I think you clarified this in your comments, but when you say it's overloaded, does that mean weight at the top, or is it throughput capacity? What does overloaded mean?
Weight, and not just at the top, but everywhere. So the microwave dish is, we if we took off the microwave dish, it would probably be okay. But so it's pretty much just weight of the antennas and the.
And I trust that you've done thorough analysis, but it just seems like this technology will be obsolete in our lifetimes. So if you can't retrofit, then I assume you've done the work on that.
Yes, absolutely. And I don't know that it'll actually be obsolete because that site could also be used as a site for the data system that's going to be coming up that the state's actually looking at. So, I mean, it's a possibility.
Okay. Robin, have any questions? I have no questions.
Well, I have one.
Go ahead. Oh,
Just
sorry.
in the interest of my wanting to know, will the old tower be recycled?
I probably, yeah. I don't see why not. I haven't actually gave that much thought. We were going to give it up to the contractor that's going to be doing the work, so they probably will recycle it.
I'd hate to see it end up in the landfill just
Oh,
because
yeah.
of what it's made of.
It's a lot of steel, so I'm sure it could be used somewhere else.
David?
Yeah, just one quick question. You briefly mentioned this in your presentation, but this tower or the antennas on the tower will be used by multiple municipalities?
Yeah. Well, the state, RTD, the county, city, EMS, the ambulance companies use it. hospitals. And also, say, if there's an emergency and you have City of Sheridan or, people from Jefferson County coming in, they'll be coming in for mutual aid. They're all on that system.
Yeah, I guess that was my question. So the system that you described, they all work together to create kind of a single, access, radio communications.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now open up to the public. There's a sign-up sheet. If you haven't signed up, we can get you in at the end. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. We ask you to be civil. Please speak directly into the microphone, as the acoustics here are abysmal. Let's see, when your 30 seconds left, a yellow card will be raised up. When your time is up, a red card will be held up. We have one name, Pam Chadbourne again.
So I am Pam Chadbourne. I live a block and a half from here, and perhaps you can guess, for once, you probably think I appear too often, but I got a notice that I live within 700 feet of this tower, and I do have an interest in it, and I wanted to say something about it. I'm convinced that this tower is needed for structural reasons. However, my understanding of this is the existing antenna is an omnidirectional antenna, and it kind of was pointing, and pointing is the wrong reference here, but for the old community. The new antennas are supposed to be pointing toward Douglas County and Jefferson County for the growth in those areas. And since I live in that direction from this antenna, I have an interest in that. Oddly, for 6 weeks before the day of the notice of this hearing came out, I was picking up RF interference on my television reception and also sometimes on the radio. In very clear interference pattern of dots, in various, they seem to look diagonal, although that's the scan frequency. So the day that the hearing was posted, I happened to go up and ask about it. The legal folks got me to Ms. Short, and I called her, and she was nice enough to answer questions about the nature of the RF being added and the direction. So curiously to me, nothing has been stated about RF interference so far. Curiously also, the day that I called, that Friday, the RF interference quit. That could totally be a coincidence. Somebody at the Essex House could have had, in a truck, could have had some cool equipment that they were playing with and they moved out. I don't know. But it was odd to me that the RF interference quit on that day. I'm not accusing the sheriff's office of doing anything odd at all. I appreciate their work for us and all of the emergency services and all of the government services who use this. But I wanted to put on record a concern about RF interference, and I'd like to know more about that, and especially since this is pointing toward Douglas County and Jefferson County and the growth there. So thanks for listening to me. I have no answers. I'll say as a citizen, it's not my job to have answers. I do have this interesting finding to report to you about RF, and I wanted to report it. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak of this issue that hasn't signed up? Seeing none, does the applicant wish to say anything else? Add anything else? Thank you. We'll now close the public hearing. I'll entertain a motion or discussion by planning commissioners.
Chair Rudnicki, before we begin, I want to make one point of order regarding a concern that was raised with RF emissions and other signal interference issues. Unfortunately, this is an area of the law where the FCC has ruthlessly preempted local authority. We are not even allowed to consider it in our application today. There is 10 years of case law where anyone has even talked about RF emissions, and their decision and gets struck down by the FCC. And I would encourage anyone who has any concern about RF emissions to contact the FCC, who has exclusive jurisdiction over this matter.
Thank you. Commissioner discussion or, or a motion?
I move to approve PC Resolution 23-2017, approving the conditional use for the public emergency communication tower located at 5334 South Prince Street.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, regarding the analysis of the tower and cost benefit for retrofitting, I would have preferred if that was made part of the applicant's package so we could see that due diligence was done on that aspect of possible retrofitting versus replacement. Part of my job in the winter as an emergency responder of SWORD on ski patrol in Winter Park, I had the opportunity to view a similar tower being retrofitted on top of Winter Park last winter. It wasn't quite 180 feet, probably more like 100 feet, but it was fully structurally reinforced with over a period of about a week, and then new load added to the tower. And that tower is subject to severe winds and weather conditions. But those are my only concerns on the application.
Any other comments here? David?
I'll just say that I'm satisfied that the tower is necessary for the community, and that it doesn't seem to have any additional impact on the area that the old one did. So, happy to see it get fixed for the next 50 years or whatever period it's being built for.
Thank you. Bruce?
Yeah, I think it's public safety, health, and welfare issue. It's a replacement vehicle. The county's responsible for the structural integrity and the operation of the thing. It's part of a bigger network. I'm obviously going to support it. I just wanted to say as well, and Pam, not to take anything away from what you were saying about Board of Adjustments, which I honestly didn't see, but in reading through this, I just wanted to compliment staff on the what I thought was really a pretty comprehensive assessment of all of the attributes involved with this, which are relatively obscure and things that we don't normally see. So thank you for the good work.
Andrew? Lynn?
I would echo Bruce on that. It was an excellent report.
Rob? I have no other comment other than nice job with the presentation and staff report. We have the motion and the second. Time to vote.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Should we go get Jason?
Jocelyn is getting Jason.
Can we continue or should we wait?
We should wait for Jason.
I'm sorry?
We should wait for Jason before we begin.
Yes, we should, so I have some more time.
Getting Jason.
I think it's terrific.
Jason who?
Yeah, right now.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Out of sight, out of mind.
I guess.
Why'd you leave me?
You didn't want to hear it. I mean, you could have had a conflict within the building, you know?
We have a brief pause until we find our missing commissioner.
Wayward
Commissioner. Who went to the local fast food place. Okay.
Hey, you should have brought pizza back. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, let's go here. Next item on public hearing is PC Resolution 242017, resolution concerning a plan development overlay for 5630 South Curtis Street, case number PDO 17-0004. Before we get to the staff report, I'll ask you again if commissioners had visited the site, what day, and if they met with anyone while they were there. Start here.
Friday, you drive by, no one.
Drive by?
I visited this site when we did this in June, but I have not visited it recently.
Okay.
You know, likewise, I've seen the site periodically, have not spoken with anyone.
I also visited the site back when we had this meeting before, but I haven't been back since and haven't talked to anyone.
I drove by back in June, previous to the first hearing, and I've not spoken to anyone about it.
I drove by the site today and just traveled through the alley and didn't talk to anyone other than both directions. I drove through the alley having to back up and work around cars that are coming in the opposite direction.
Drove by Friday, didn't talk to anyone.
And I drove by earlier this evening and didn't speak with anyone on site.
I drove by in June, the first time this came up, and also Sunday, didn't talk to anyone. Are there any reasons why anybody would recuse himself from this hearing? Seeing none, now we'll have a staff presentation.
Good evening, Planning Commission. Carol Kuhn, representing Community Development. The item before you this evening is a public hearing for Resolution 24-2017, a plan development overlay at 5630 South Curtis Street, case number PDO 17-0004. The applicant's representative, Mike Raggeth, is here this evening and will be making a presentation. The item has been properly noticed with a sign posted and mailed notice provided to everyone within 700 feet of the property. I wanted to just, before I get too far into the presentation, we did receive 4 questions. Staff responded to each of the planning commissioners. They were provided to staff earlier today. I'd like to just briefly touch on those. The site analysis table, we had some difficulties with the staff report. We had a change that was made on Friday to the Legistar documents, and I think maybe that's where some of the disconnect occurred. The applicant is proposing a setback of 2 feet. Their table does not reflect it, but now that updated document that I just handed out to everyone has the updated information. The site, another question was related to the site and 40 feet or 3 stories. The definition, the question was asked, what constitutes a story? And the code does not define a story, and the slash 40 feet slash 3 stories is an or, and the applicant is requesting 40 feet. Also, in the last paragraph, second sentence, a 14-foot area of unobstructed open space. The table indicated just open space, and the unobstructed open space and common open space shall include, but are not limited to landscaping, patios, plazas, arcades, pedestrian and/or bicycle pathways, fences, retaining walls, benches, fountains, statuary, kiosks, light fixtures, and picnic shelters. The applicant will need to update the table to indicate that it's unobstructed open space to meet the requirements of CA, zone district. And the number 4 was my mistake. I did not remove the reference to land use 3 because it was from the previous staff report. This area is located within the residential mixed-use district in sub-area 4 of the Littleton Downtown Design Standards as indicated in other areas throughout the staff report. So now that we got the housekeeping done, I'll get on to this presentation. The applicant is requesting relief from the predominant front setback of 20.93 feet to 14 feet through the plan development overlay process. The plan development overlay process is a quasi-judicial process. The Planning Commission makes the final determination on a PDO, as PDOs do not move on to City Council. The Planning Commission shall determine if the application meets the provisions of Section 1095 of the PDO chapter based on the evidence and testimony presented at the public hearing. The Planning Commission may vote to approve the application, to approve subject to modifications, to deny the application, or to table to a date certain. The Planning Commission must base its decision on compliance with the criteria. In the criteria in 1091, the intent of a plan development overlay is to provide a procedure which permits more flexible site design and development than is possible under traditional zone districts while maintaining the provisions of the code. In 1095, the applicant can take advantage of the flexibility of the PDO regulations if the proposed development demonstrates special attention to creative, high-quality design and to producing a development that reinforces and complements citywide and neighborhood design goals and objectives. So here we are in the process. The plan development overlay, it's a decision by the Planning Commission. Subdivision exemption, the applicant is also processing a concurrent subdivision exemption application, and then the applicant will have to bring in a site development plan. As mentioned, there's a criteria that the applicant and the application is evaluated against. Section 10.2.18 is the CA zone district requirements. 10.4.1A2 is the predominant front setback requirements. 10.9 includes the plan development overlay requirements. Specifically, there's criteria in 10.9.5A through H, as well as the downtown design standards in sub-area 4. And then, in addition, the applicant has to show consistency with the citywide comprehensive plan. So the site is located, the property actually consists of 2 lots on South Curtis Street between Main Street and Powers within the mixed-use neighborhood. It's in the 5600 block of South Curtis Street, which includes predominantly older buildings within a mixed-use block. The maps up here, one is the aerial and one is the zoning map. This is the table that was included in your staff report. It just is yellow, and I've put some arrows in it. This site data table shows the proposed deviations from the CA zone district requirements, specifically a front building setback of 14 feet, where the predominant front setback is 20.93 feet. The applicant is also proposing to increase the minimum open space requirement from 10% to 20%. And the applicant is also adding side and rear setbacks, which in CA there are no side or rear setbacks or front setbacks. But the predominant front setback sets the setback in that zone district for residential development. The applicant is proposing a 3-story, 40-foot, 6-unit townhome development on a 0.2-acre property. And I have a little bit of information in your staff report about how the predominant front setback is determined. And although the CA zone district does not have setback requirements, in residential zone districts where more than 25% of the platted lots along one block front are developed, the front setback established for the developed lots shall set the required front setback for development of the remainder of the block front, including additions to the existing structures. And then under the PDO, standards may be varied if the intent of a PDO and design standards set forth in 10.9.5 are met. And as I mentioned, the applicant is providing additional open space and adding setbacks where none are required. PDO applications also require illustrative building elevations and site plans in order to demonstrate how the proposed development could be built under the zoning requirements. The views at Curtis plan includes illustrative site plan as well as building elevations which demonstrate conceptually how the site will be developed. Included are maximum heights, drive aisle widths, materials, and colors. The applicant has also provided design standards specific to this development, and the design standards are provided in the site plan and the PDO application that I handed out, and the design standards are on sheet 2. The applicant has set those specific to this development in addition to providing a table that was in your staff report, which is a matrix of all the design standards that are in sub-area 4. These building elevations shown on this slide depict a 3-story, 3-unit pitched roof buildings with some units having a walkout to the rooftop deck. The units adjacent to South Curtis Street face the street, each with a sidewalk that connects from South Curtis Street to the entrance of the units. Other units are connected by a sidewalk and face toward the exterior property lines. Garage access is interior to the site with the access from a 23-foot private driveway off of a 9-foot public alley. And some clarification on the alley. The alley is 12 feet, but it's paved to 9 feet. So it's only a 9-foot, that's why it seems narrow. It's only 9 feet of paving. Oh, let me go back to that one. So also the applicant in his design standards, they have put forth elevations will contain elements found along South Curtis Street with lap siding, pitched roofs, articulated roof lines, and a variety of building materials and window placement. The applicant is including 6-foot privacy fencing along the sides of the property. Trees and shrubs will be provided in the front setback to transition from the building and the driveway to South Curtis Street. And the applicant has proposed additional screening to screen the driveway that runs perpendicular to Curtis Street and perpendicular to the alley. The existing curb cut on South Curtis Street will be eliminated and access will be solely off of the alley. So I touched a little bit on this with the predominant front setback, but I thought it warranted a little bit of clarification on the city's definitions of what a setback is and how this was determined. I believe it's a little bit different than what the applicant was proposing before. According to the city's definitions, a setback is the distance in linear feet measured on a horizontal plane between the outer perimeter of a structure and each of its lot lines. So you say, okay, what's a structure? And why are we saying it's to the overhang and the eaves? A structure, according to the city's code, is that which is built or constructed. Any piece of work artificially built up or composed of parts joined together in some definite manner, including, for example, buildings, fences, retaining walls, and accessory structures. So the applicant has provided 2 measurements in the site plan. One is to the roof overhangs and one is to the foundation of the building. Typically in jurisdictions, the setback is to the foundation of the building. In the city of Littleton, because of the definition of structure and anything that is built up or constructed, it has been interpreted to go out to the roof overhangs, which is why you will see 2 measurements in that diagram. So the applicant has taken the more restrictive of the 2, which is out to the roof overhangs in the determination of this predominant front setback. And by taking the average of those, of every roof overhang, he has calculated it to be 20.93 feet. So we're going to test your math afterwards. No, just kidding.
We'll ignore you.
We had enough math with the other stuff. More than, less than. Section 1095, the development standards. So like I mentioned before, to take advantage of the flexibility allowed by the PDO regulations, the proposed development must demonstrate special attention to creative, high-quality design and to producing a development that reinforces and complements citywide and neighborhood design goals and objectives. So the application was evaluated for height, and the applicant is not requesting any increase in the maximum building height of 40 feet or 3 stories. They've set this at 40 feet. Lot width and setback. The applicant is not asking for any change in the lot width. They're just requesting that the predominant front setback of 20.93 calculated to the roof overhangs be reduced to 14 feet. The applicant is setting side and rear setbacks at 2 feet, and that is beyond what is specified in the CA zone district. The applicant is not requesting any deviation from the lot size requirements. The applicant is also increasing the amount of open space from 10% to 20%. The applicant is not proposing any off-street parking or loading changes. Industrial parking and parking garages are not applicable to this application. The project compliance with the design guidelines, it's actually design guidelines compatibility. The subject property is in sub-area 4 of the downtown design standards. The applicant's proposed development appears to be consistent with these standards. Staff has evaluated the PDO and finds that the applicable standards have been met. The applicant has provided an analysis, and that was in your attached table, and we're starting to get all of those turned in with the applications, where the applicant goes through each one of the standards. We have them in a template now, and we're giving them to applicants to fill out with their application. So I think it makes it easier for everyone to go through and see how they've complied. And also in your packet, I've included a description of how you, I'll get to that in the next slide, but there's some discussion about standards versus guidelines, and we can discuss that on the next slide. So the standards are interesting in the downtown design standards, where you have standards, and it says the standards shall be met, and they use design standards have specific direction based on the stated intent. Standards use the term shall to indicate that compliance is required unless it can be demonstrated that an acceptable alternative meets one or more of the following conditions. An alternative better achieves the stated intent. The objective which the standard was created to address will not be achieved by application of the standard in a particular circumstance, or unique site factors make the standard impractical or cost prohibitive. And then the DRC, which has been removed from the code in 2012, or Historic Preservation Board, determines that the greater public benefit is achieved if the standard is waived in return for adherence to one or more of the guidelines. So the guidelines use the word should. So there's some cases where the applicant says, I can't meet the standard, but I've done it through a guideline, and that's completely permissible in the city's downtown design standards. So I just thought that was worth mentioning. So if you see that in his table, how he's addressed those, he's met them through either meeting a standard or a guideline. The proposed development does appear to be consistent with the city-wide plan, as it will provide new housing stock in the downtown neighborhood and provides opportunities for downtown residents to work, shop, and play. More specifically, the proposed development meets Policy 1.6 in that it is a newer housing type that is the result of changing demands in the local housing market. In addition, the proposed development will provide more diversity to the housing options within the neighborhood with proximity to downtown, and the diversification of housing within the downtown neighborhood does have these increased densities. So staff finds that the request to reduce the required 20.93 foot predominant front setback to 14 feet on a 0.20 acre site located at 5630 South Curtis Street complies with the plan development overlay criteria specified in 1095, including compatibility with the Littleton Downtown Design Standards and Guidelines and the citywide and neighborhood design goals and objectives, and does not impair the intent of the land use code and can be approved. Staff is proposing, it was in your staff report, one condition of approval, but I do have one more that I would like to add. So the condition of approval that was in your staff report, at the time of the site development plan, additional setbacks and alternative building placement may be necessary to accommodate the placement of pad-mounted transformers to meet the Xcel Energy requirements. Xcel Energy indicated that the site might be too full to accommodate some of their pad and transformer requirements, so the applicant will need to address that with the site development plan. And we've been working closely with Xcel Energy to meet their requirements and try to catch this ahead of time before the site plans come in. And the second condition of approval that staff would like to add is prior to recordation of the PDO Mylars, the applicant shall make all minor technical corrections to the record copy of the PDO, and such corrections shall be made to the satisfaction of the City of Littleton. So there's a couple of minor corrections that still need to be made to the plans. The plan set that I did give you corrected the predominant front setback in the site development table, but over in the intent statement, it states that it's still 20.92 feet, and that needs to be updated and corrected in the intent statement. And then the open space does need to be changed to unobstructed open space rather than just simply open space in the table. And all references to that need to be modified and corrected in the PDO prior to recordation. So with that, that concludes staff's presentation. I'm here to answer any questions. The applicant and their team is here. They can for their presentation as well.
Okay, thank you. Questions of staff of a technical nature? Lynn?
I wasn't able to find any information from the fire department or Public Works regarding maintenance of that alley. And I'm sorry, but Littleton does not maintain their alleys very well in the snow. That's from experience. And fire access.
So fire has responded they provided information that if they have access to the front and the back, they can fight the fire. And so they are going to be able to address the fire issues. And the building will be fully, no, it is not fully sprinklered.
Could be. And then,
It's a public alley and it's supposed to be maintained by the city. I can't answer why that's not done, not my department. Or, no, Public Works is not, it's not ours. The streets and maintenance, it's a public alley, it's supposed to be maintained by the city. It's not a top tier, I mean, it's not a bus route, it's not gonna be first on the list.
I would just like to have seen some reference to that into the staff report.
Oh, sorry. The public alley, though, public right-of-way.
The current zoning is CA, correct?
Correct.
And it is presently, this parcel is in a residential mixed-use district?
Yes.
Okay. Visitor parking, would that be you or the applicant?
That'll be the applicant. I'm not sure how they're going to address that. Our code does not have a requirement, though, for visitor parking. Most codes have, half a space per unit or a quarter of a space per unit. Our code makes 0 references to visitor parking for multifamily.
Okay. The rear setback is proposed to be 2 feet. So is that 2 feet on the 9 feet that you mentioned?
2 feet from the edge of the right-of-way. So it would be from the property boundary.
A turning radius of 2 feet to get into that side alley of what
Yes.
they have, in addition to the 9, really 12 feet. That's
Yes. So the building will be set back from the property line 2 feet. And the property line and the right-of-way are coincident.
There is a 2-foot side setback proposed, or a 0-foot side setback?
2 foot. So that's what the correction that I handed out.
That's a correction.
That's why it needs to be corrected in the entire document and referenced before we record, which is that technical correction.
The drive width still 23 feet?
23 feet under, 23 feet.
Now it's 20.
So differences between the last submittal and the current submittal are height. The one that was denied had a request for additional height. They also requested a more narrow drive aisle, and along with the predominant front setback changes. So, and then the building, the units also faced interior. Now they face them exterior with a sidewalk. There were, I think, concerns were raised about conflict between cars parking in the garages and the interior residences, and they have faced everything out with the driveways for the garages being the only thing off of that driveway.
It looks, and it sounds like you understand this, it looks like there's a total of 600 square feet from a previous proposal that has been subtracted. Has that been basically added to the drive area?
600 feet from what?
We had a 13.6 proposal before, now we have a 13,000 straight proposal.
Per square foot of the building? Yeah, they had to squish it down for the
600
drive.
square feet disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
And then was any additional discussion or feature added to maintain downtown historic design standards?
So they just went through that matrix that was provided for you, that how they complied with it. They added some more features to the front, and they also, one of the concerns raised by Planning Commission was the view to the alley, so they added additional landscaping. But they added some more features and colors that were a little bit more in line. I think the last one had green and some other colors, so they went with more stuff that was on the block.
Good for now, thank you.
I think that's Bruce? So there seemed to be, talk a little bit about the sprinklering. You were saying one thing and the applicant was shaking his head no.
The applicant's indicating that the building will not be fully sprinkled. God, say that word 8 times. I can't even do it once.
Sprinkled.
Sprinklered.
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 You have a problem too?
Apparently.
G-cells,
So is that
C-cells.
going to meet fire code?
Right, it has to, so the site plan will have to comply with the fire code. If the fire department requires that it will need to be sprinklered, I said it right, sprinklered, they will have to sprinkler it, and their building set has not been reviewed at this time. So the PDO is still just your zoning, it's your higher level. They're asking for this. The fire district may have something to say about it not being sprinklered.
Okay, sounds right. With respect to the pad transformers and this diagram, I am mildly curious, where do you envision the transformers to actually be located within the context of what they're proposing?
That has become a problem downtown. Where do you put these things? And some of them are quite large. And Xcel Energy has spacing where you can't put anything near it and it has to be clear and you can't have landscaping around it. And we do not want them in the front yard. They can't be in the front yard. So it'll have to be in the rear somewhere. So that's a site planning issue that we'll have to deal with. But I wanted to make sure it was on the record that if this doesn't fit, it just isn't going to work. And they're going to have to figure out some way to get that transformer in there.
Okay, so obviously that has not been resolved to your satisfaction yet.
Well, we haven't really talked about the transformer.
which is
Xcel
fine.
Energy they were trying to get it early on in the process, like with zoning and stuff, to state this is becoming a problem and that they'll work with them. They have a design team that will work with each of the applicants and help them find a spot for it on the site. But in these infill developments, it's very problematic.
Okay, yeah, it sounds like it would be. We go around and around, but I want to go, talk to me again about the setbacks issue. I mean, if I interpret what you indicated was by virtue of this, I don't know what the technical term is, I just call it a roof overhang based on the design of this. The straight up from the foundation is running at 19 feet on a setback, if I'm interpreting these diagrams correctly. In other words, it's 19, the distance to the primary roof is 19 feet, but the distance to the quote-unquote front setback is 14 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So hypothetically, they could take off the front.
Well, the front porch is part of the elements that make it compatible with the...
No, I agree,
yeah.
but I guess what I'm saying is if we get hung up over 14 versus 19, it could be 19, and that's a 2-foot variance, almost 3. But it would be a lot less desirable from an aesthetics perspective relative to what we're trying to accomplish.
Yes.
And so the 14 is really our interpretation of the technical spec that's out there as opposed to sort of the visual, who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes kind of thing, to the foundation, which is more like 19 feet.
Right. So that's why I wanted to bring that up. So if you look at this diagram, like the applicant has provided both with the roof overhang and to the foundation.
Yeah.
So the roof overhang is what makes this less compliant with the 20.93.
Yeah. So technically it's 14, but wink and a nod, it really is going to look like 19 if you didn't look specifically at the overhang of the roof.
Yes, but in other jurisdictions would measure it to the foundation, but we don't.
Okay. All right. And then last question, I guess. Your 10-4-1A2, you talked about, this is what is in that code section, which I'll raise my hand and say I did not read. But it's 25% of the platted lots along one block that are developed, even though there's no setback requirement for a CA zone district. That's actually what the code.
Well, it says in residential zone districts.
But this is a CA.
Right, well, it says for, residential development. So this is residential development.
Okay.
So we're under the category of residential development, so therefore this predominant front setback does govern.
But you only take other residential parcels, or you take like commercial parcels?
You take all the parcels on the block face, because it says.
Are you taking the one that they're taking out?
Yes.
But see, that doesn't make any sense, because I mean, that's
I
like.
realize that. We've had this.
Huh?
We've talked about this a lot, whether or not it makes sense. Believe me, if you ask the applicant, he'll tell you the same thing. So I'm sure he'll get his chance to get up here and tell you it doesn't make sense to have the one, and that is the one that throws off the anomaly.
I'm sure it is.
That one's 43 feet back.
Yeah. But
So
if you-
it does kind of skew the whole thing, but that's how we've set the policy. That's how we've been evaluating all of them. We had to come up with something for some consistency, and it's evaluating it. So if you take out the one that you're taking away,
Yeah.
then that's already changed the character. So you're taking it at that blip in time before the structure is gone, and that sets that predominant front setback for the block.
No, I respect what you're saying. I mean, somebody's got to have a stake in the ground. If hypothetically, if you did ignore the one that they're replacing, because at some point it's going to be 14 or 19, depending on your preference, what does the average look like if it's excluding that particular parcel? Do you know?
I had that math, and I did not bring that math, but it was much closer to 15 or 16 feet.
Okay, so it's not a dramatic alteration if we ignore what's going to go away if this goes in. Okay, all right, thanks.
David?
Yeah, I guess I would agree with Bruce on that, just looking at, once we have the new structure, the predominant setbacks are not going to look out of whack with that new building. Do you know what I know we talked all about this last time too, but do you know what the predominant setback is on the west side? It seems smaller. There's several buildings right across the street, I think, that are right up against the sidewalk, it looked like.
The applicant may have that information, since the code specifically says on that one block face, we only included that specific information.
Right.
But the applicant may have a judgment on that as well.
Yeah, I was just curious. I mean, I know we talked about that before too, that it's just that one side of the street. But, I mean, we're looking at the character of the area, and it seems, I don't know, I guess I'm not here to change policy, but it just seems like we're concerned with the whole street, not just the one side. Okay, well, I think that's the only question I had for now.
Hi, Carol.
Hi.
So, thank you for summarizing what.
By the way, hi.
Thank you for summarizing the differences. So just so I'm clear, it's they're no longer asking for a variance on height. They have a wider drive aisle, and then the front entries are on the sides versus the interiors.
Yes.
Right.
I
So now
believe that was one of the concerns that Planning Commission had with a small side door right next to the garage door, and there was conflict between driver and people, and so they've faced them all to the exterior, except for the two in the front that face the front on Curtis Street. So there's two that face Curtis, and then two on each building that face the outside with a walkway.
And those walkways are, the sidewalks are in the side setback? Because they'll be permanent sidewalks.
Mm-hmm. They are within the side setback, because the setback is from the structure, the roof overhang.
Okay,
So the sidewalk can be in there, flat work can be in those setbacks.
okay. And 2 feet is wide enough for,
It undulates, there's an overhang and some other things, so the sidewalk will have to be large enough for people to walk on. So if you look at the sides, there's some overhang underneath.
Remember, it's 2 feet from the overhang. The sidewalk would be wider. The face of the building is further back.
Okay.
So we can ask the applicant.
That comes right down in the middle of that sidewalk.
Got it. Okay. So it is reasonably wide. It's not a 2 foot wide sidewalk. Okay, that's good. And then just on the front setbacks, it's not really just roof overhangs, because there is
a porch.
There are porches and railings and
Mhm.
stuff. So it's not just an overhang.
Right.
It's actually like patios that are.
Yes, it's all the stuff that's in
And,
the front that makes it built up, that which is built or constructed.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
On your staff report, page 8, I didn't see a definition for the acronym DRC.
Oh, I'm sorry, it was the Development Review Committee, and it was made up of staff at the director and manager level with Public Works and Community Development, and they directed projects through the DRC and made determinations, but that was removed in 2012 from the code. but it wasn't corrected throughout all the other things that were dependent on it, so that's been something that staff has been taking on.
All right. My other question is related to the CA district zoning on 10 to 18. C, special development allowances. And under that, item 1, development parcel shall be no less than 25,000 square feet. What's the applicability of that specific portion of the CA zoning?
So we talked at great length about this with our former legal counsel, Kristen Schladorn, and that those allowances were particularly only related to the maximum height of structures. If you were asking to increase the height, you had to increase the open space, and you had to be no less than 25,000 square feet. So it was related to a request for height, not all PDOs in CA. Because there was some confusion on
as
the
that's
staff
worded.
reading it and the way it was worded, but it was determined by legal counsel to be related to a request for height.
Okay, is that something that's going to be addressed in our zoning updates?
I hope so. I hope there's lots of things that are addressed in our zoning updates.
Well, we'll take your word for it on that, the legal determination on that.
And Jocelyn Mills can confirm she was involved with all those conversations that we talked about, and it was related to height.
And yes, it's on the list.
And we have a list, and it's
Let the
growing.
record show we have some quivering chins here for pleading. Okay.
It's about this long.
Any other questions for John?
No, that's no further questions.
Robin? Jason?
I feel like I need to face her.
I just wanted to clarify, so you're talking about in your second condition for the correcting of the PDO was the 20.92 would be 20.93. That would be unobstructed open space, and that the site development data would, since right now it says 0 setback, will be made to 2.
Yes, and setbacks will be shown on the site, the illustrative site plan. They'll be dimensioned on there, so we have them tied down.
Yeah, mostly I was just thinking of, on the PDO here, with the site development data, where it
Yes.
said 0.
So that will be fixed.
So those 3 things are the 3 things that you were talking about.
And one additional, which will be the side setbacks that will be shown on the site plan, that anything related to the setbacks that we've determined with the PDO and anything related to the open space needs to be updated so that it's consistently stated that it's unobstructed open space.
Thank you.
My setback questions were answered earlier, so thank you.
Any other questions for staff? I'm sure the applicant is just dying to get up here.
Yeah. I had the same question that Bruce had, and you answered it about the, if the building to be demolished was taken out, what would be the average setback? Also, I'll ask the applicant this, but it looks like the only reason he's here is for relief from the front setback requirement. Is that correct?
Yes, that is the only thing on the table right now.
To boil it down versus the other, last time was the 3 items, the height, the driveway width, it was a complaint, but it wasn't the walkways for the interior units along the driveway. So, okay.
So they heard the concerns, went back to the drawing board, and are coming back with something that's now down to just one issue.
Okay.
One issue from the design development perspective.
Yes.
But there's still the question of whether the current zoning is still relevant or a new zoning needs to be considered. Or has this already been rezoned?
No, it won't be rezoned. You're just making a PDO, plan development overlay.
CA.
Yes.
In a residential mixed-use district.
Right.
And so our question is whether or not this residential development fits within that current zoning, or a new PDO should be developed. Let me restate that.
Yeah.
Whether a new
You had me for a
PDO should
minute.
be developed because the current zoning, residential mixed-use CA zone, is no longer valid for this parcel.
No, it's, the PDO is an overlay district, so it says that the basic stuff is still there, but there's some things that don't quite work. So they're asking for deviation from those. Now, CA has 0 setbacks, front, side, rear, anything, nothing. So but because it's residential uses, development in.
Residential mixed use.
Well, the request is for residential in that 10, 4, 8, I'm trying to remember the numbers, 10, 4. Sorry, got to go to it in the code.
Dash 1A2.
10, 4, 1.
Yeah, it's a residential.
It's residential, but it says residential development.
But the zone is residential mixed use.
Right, the zoning, we're not changing the zoning, still will be CA, but we'll have, if you guys approve this, it'll have a PDO next to it, it'll be CA PDO. And it's not, it's a rezoning, it's that you guys are saying, if you do decide that this is okay, that they are requesting that this PDO is this deviation, this one minor thing. And it's because of this predominant front setback. So it talks about in residential zone districts where more than 25% of the platted lots along one block front are developed. So because it's residential in there, that predominant front setback applies. And CA can go either way, mixed use, commercial, so this applies. And they're just asking for the one, and then more than 25% of the lots are developed along that lot, that block face. And a block face is from one intersection to the other, only on one side of the block.
Any other questions? I guess I'm looking at Andrew.
No, I'm good.
You're done? Okay. Any other questions for staff? Thank you. Now have the applicant presentation, please. You could state your name, address, speak into the microphone. Again, the acoustics here are terrible.
Yeah, the document. I believe the document camera works. We got maybe no tech on that.
Excuse me. Hello, my name is Andy Ulrey. I'm with Design Edge Architects. I live at 600 South Harrison Street in Denver, Colorado. Can you all see the screen behind you? Okay.
And
TV thing. Okay. Just want to make sure. At the risk of not keeping us all here all night, I will try not to duplicate information. Carol did a wonderful job presenting our project, and I'll just again touch on some of the highlights of that and some of the reasons why we're back here from June and some of the things that we changed. And again, I apologize if I am redundant on some issues, and I'm going to try to answer some of the questions. It was difficult for me to sit silent, when the questions were being asked on a couple of these issues. So hopefully I catch all of the ones that you had. If not, feel free to ask them again. As mentioned in the staff report, the last time we were here, we were looking for a number of different variances, and really, as two of the members of council stated, this is a setback issue. This is really what this is about. I can't remember the exact terms that you used, that it's kind of crazy or it's bad, and we completely agree with those statements, that this commercial building that's an outlier, some 40, 50 feet back, is really what's driving that setback to 20.93. The exact, if that building didn't exist, if it was a parking lot, if it was torn down, say 5 years ago or something, that wouldn't be counted. The setback average would be 15.82. We're asking for a 14-foot setback, so much closer to that. The reason we're at the 14 is the properties to the north of our of our project are 14-foot 10, 12-foot 11. Those are the two properties to the north. The two properties immediately to the south are 19 feet 7 and 16 feet. The 14, we feel it's a sweet spot in between the two of them. It continues the streetscape. It brings our building closer in line. If we were to build our building back where it was, we're not quite as up in front with the other structures adjacent to it. The wall itself of the building, and this is an odd thing that Littleton does have. I think the only other jurisdictions are in the mountains, and they measure setbacks to the eaves for forest fire spread, trees, things of that nature. But the vast majority of districts in town measure to the foundation wall. City of Denver measures to the foundation wall, and then they give a front setback porch increase of 8 feet. So again, very similar to other parts of town. Our building wall is actually at 21 feet, the main building itself, and then we project out that additional 8 feet for enhanced features of front porches, amenities that were something discussed with staff, as well as we felt were nice amenities to the street, encouraging pedestrian connectivity, interaction with neighbors as you walk by, and things of that nature. With respect, I think that answers all the questions with respect to the setback, but I'm here to answer more if need be. With respect to the side setbacks, as one of the gentlemen mentioned, it's a 2-foot setback, but that's to the overhang. We actually have 5'2" to the building line, and we have a 4-foot sidewalk down each side. The councilwoman who raised the concern, or most, is not here today, and I think she would be happy with what we did. We took that feedback from separating the cars and the pedestrians. When we had them both down the center aisle, we heard that loud and clear and went back to the drawing boards and thought that was a good suggestion to split those up. What it did was, it did not, as one of the gentlemen mentioned, the increase in lot coverage did not go solely back to the driveway, it went to the outsides, so it went actually to the open space. So our open space is actually approximately 27%, where the zoning would require only 20%. The last thing that we had abandoned was the height. There was some debate on how to calculate height, and it was an easy thing for us to lower the building 30 inches across the board to get the ridge below the 40-foot height restriction. In addition to that, we took, and you can see that from the front elevation as well as the sides, to decrease the scale at the street, the front 2 units, we eliminated the rooftop patio from those because they already have an enhanced outdoor space at both the first and second floor level. That lowers the scale at the front ridge piece approximately 12 feet from where it was before, and 9 feet at the ridge right behind that. So not only did we get within the height restriction where we no longer needed the request, we tried to address some of the concerns that council had with mass and scale at the streetscape. So when pedestrians are walking by, it is not as tall as it could be. We're not pushing to the 40 feet at the very front portion of the structure. I will jump back, I suppose, into the setbacks on the alley side. The alley side, again, is a 2-foot setback, but we're the same 5-foot distance to the 12-foot alley line, one that will give us a little better turning radius. We know it's a difficult alley, but we can't solve a problem that exists. We just only have to try to work within that and manage that. And one of the ways is, even though we're allowed a 0-foot setback, we're providing a 5-foot setback to our building line, which would make some back out areas. We pave that area. It makes it a little bit easier for our residents. And even, like I said, I lived in Wash Park that had 12-foot alleys. It's dumpsters and different things. It's something you live with when you live there. It's not ideal, but it's a situation that exists that we feel is manageable. Lastly, in terms of enhanced things that Carol had mentioned, we increased the landscaping in front of the drive aisle on the west side, so to really screen that parking from the street. It wasn't mentioned, but it was mentioned last time. We had went back and forth on whether we should keep the existing curb cut, have access from the street, and working with staff and then in our own, 3 additional parking spaces are turned back to the city now because we closed that closed that curb cut. That will enhance pedestrian connection from neighbors to the north to downtown and back and forth, rather than crossing a sea of asphalt to that. It's a much more improved landscape area, as well as adding additional parking back in. With respect to the base zoning, we're providing 12 parking stalls, 9 would be required. 575 square feet per unit would be what would be allowed, which would allow up to 15 units on the site. We're proposing 6. The height restriction at 40, we're maintaining that. The side setbacks at 0, we're having increased side setbacks for our project and rear setbacks. And the open space, I had mentioned before at 20 feet, we're providing 27% or 20%. We're providing approximately 27% open space. I'm going to try to answer some of the questions that were raised during staff's presentation. With respect to Excel, it was mentioned that it's not worked out. If you know how Excel works, you have to file an application, pay them a lot of money before they will start doing any design work on your project. It's 6 units. It's not a large apartment where larger transformers, pole-mounted transformers are typically done to serve this type of facility. It's not that we haven't ignored it. We just, when we're going for the request that we are today and him being denied, it's not wanting to spend money with Excel when you're still 6 months out with them, no matter what you do. Talked about the bill. I think I tried to answer all the questions that you guys had throughout that. I'm obviously here, and Mike Raggett is here from my office as well, who knows every nut and bolt related to this project down to the 1/10 of an inch. So if any other more technical questions arise, we'll be happy to answer them.
They will arise, starting now.
Okay.
Questions for the applicant?
Will there be an HOA for this, or how are you going to do the maintenance?
There will have to be some sort of HOA to manage. They'll be individually owned, but there'll be some sort of HOA to deal with snow removal, lawn care, things of that nature. General painting that would need to, maintenance that would need replacing a roof over time, yes.
Andrew? Good. Bruce?
Yeah, talk a little bit about the sprinkler issue, just for fun.
Sure. In a building of this type, there's 2 ways that the fire department looks at it. You can do 2-hour separations between the units, which is what we're proposing, or you can sprinkler the building. We've chosen, and probably the most common way is to put 2-hour separations. And when I say 2-hour separation, that's a firewall that divides each unit. So if there was a fire in one unit, you have 2 hours of burn time, I guess, is the simplest way to put that. Fire departments look at project like this, and in the city of Littleton, they look at distance to fire stations, they look at access to hydrants, they look at, as Carol mentioned, accessibility and how they would fight the fire. And at the stage that they're at, sprinklers are not required. That could change. The code could change when we go to building plan review, and that could be a requirement that is put upon us, and if so, that would be the case. But that's the way we're electing to construct it now.
Okay, and I didn't see it in here, but is this thing LEED certified, or what's your energy efficiency?
Most residential is going to and I apologize for not having looked up whether Littleton is under the 2015 code.
I don't.
The latest international building codes, if they're 2012 or 2015, there are 12. The main change to that code is building envelope and energy thermal envelope. So there's an enhanced thermal quality to the exterior wall construction as well as the HVAC systems that are put into the buildings. We have not, again, vetted every issue out with the developer and contractor, but more do what's called Energy Star certification versus LEED for a residential project of this scale.
Okay. And are you doing anything with, fiber optic? I assume fiber optic to the curb or something, or are you just going to let people do wireless or whatever they need? Are you providing any sort of enhanced, telecommunication capabilities?
It hasn't been discussed, so
Okay,
the owner could answer that question if that was pertinent.
Okay, that's fine, thanks.
David?
Where does the equipment go for, I assume it's forced air and you've got AC in each unit. Is there an AC unit on the outside of each of these?
It'll go on the roof.
On the roof? Okay.
Yes.
And are they visible? Is that in addition to that or
I think
addition to
you
what's
will
shown
not be
here?
able to see them. I mean, you can see anything depending on if you get at the right angle. If you're at a third floor, the 3-story units across the alley, I wouldn't promise that theirs aren't visible from us and vice versa, but from the average pedestrian walking down the street, you wouldn't see them.
Okay. Yeah, I just don't see, you didn't put them in this rendering that you've got here, right?
That's architect's poetic license on those kind of things.
And I guess, can you talk a little bit about it may have been mentioned already, I think you might have said something about it, but where the transformer might go? Does Excel have different, I don't know much about transformers. I've seen just regular square boxes. Do they have the ability to
depending on the
change?
size and the demand, there are different sizes and configurations, some rectangular, some square. Some in neighborhoods like this, are fed currently pole-mounted transformers. The electrical is fed from the alley, so it will have to be on the alley side. Excel wouldn't route it any other way. It would be nice if they came in and buried the entire line, but I don't. They're usually not that kind.
So,
to do that.
so currently, I don't remember, but I assume that the electricity is on poles right now.
Yes.
In that alley area. Okay. Okay, that's all I got.
Right. Good. Thank you. Good. John?
Out of curiosity, there's a couple of doors shown on I believe it's the east elevation on the alley side. What are those little doors?
Yeah, be on your mic. What are the doors? Oh, so those are screen walls, doors screening the meter cabinets. So all of the electrical meters we mounted to the building, and we provided screening for those, and it's just a
Very
man
shallow
gate.
little area that's screened. Okay. And so then trash cans would be from garage units out to the alley and then back to the garage units.
That's correct. In the way the plan worked out by moving the pedestrian entrances and some of the ins and outs that we have, there's some nice little pockets actually for people if they choose to leave their dumpster outside or choose to put it in their garage. That could be something also governed by the HOA as well. So it was again, a suggestion by you all that had some positive impacts beyond just the basic one.
Thank you. No further questions.
Good evening, just a couple of questions. I wanted to ask a little bit more about the front setback for the 14, recognizing, like you said, the present building is an outlier compared to the rest of the buildings next to it. And you only looked at the buildings to the north, but when you take in consideration the ones to the south, that one that's immediately next to you is almost a 20-foot setback. And that's our term of a 20-foot setback. So I was curious why you excluded considering that when you chose just to use the two northern ones. I mean, in your plan, it says you just use the northern ones, and you didn't say anything about using the southern ones, because in the code, it's like they want to have something that's constant and continuous, whereas if you're just taking those, the two, and then putting you, which does put it in line. And then you have the one that's just directly south. Suddenly that jumps back the 20 feet, and then the other one comes up to 16 feet.
Well, as I mentioned at the beginning, if our building wasn't there and you took the average front setback, it would be 15.8. So we're kind of splitting the difference, I guess, if you will, in between them, in that our building is actually 20 foot back, but our porches and enhanced features are at 14. I mean, we consider that, obviously, you know, between the two of them. And I have another diagram that I could post here or hand you that puts this kind of in between. I don't know if you want to.
We have the, not like that, but I know, I hear what you're saying. So you're showing us an illustrative design for what you might do, which is a very nice design, but we're land use. So if, say, something happened and then you weren't going to do this building, we've had it happen in the past where a building is, you know, set with something, a PDO or a rezone, and it doesn't happen, it gets sold, and then they take the parameters we have. So yes, while you are looking at having the building 19 feet back, our setback shows 14 feet. That's all that has to be done to. So when we're looking at this simply as a land use issue, that's why that difference of that 5 feet suddenly becomes more substantial.
Sure.
So that's my concern is great, you guys look like you want to do this, and that does look nice, but we can't go by the illustrative, we have to go by the land use issue. So that was my concern with the 14 feet versus the 20 feet that's on the south side of you and the 16 foot. So, but I hear what you're saying.
But isn't it, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, isn't part of the illustratives become a part of the PDO? So for somebody to come in and amend that or change that, that would be a part of that change. I mean, am I wrong about that or not?
If the PDO is approved this evening, then those parameters of what is approved in the PDO would govern any future development. Is that what, to clarify?
And the elevations are a part of the PDO, correct?
No. Those are illustrative for purposes of what the PDO is. However, I would say the illustrative plan also is a demonstration of the requirements around the design, specific standards that are identified as part of this PDO. So keep that in mind as well.
Which I definitely agree with. But we can only use the 14 feet because that's what the PDO says the front setback is, right?
Right. If, assuming the PDO is approved at 14 feet, then that would be your front setback for any future development. That's correct.
Right. Yeah. So, and just one other question. So in on page 2 of your plan here, you talk about using a contemporary design. And looking at your illustrative presentation, I can see where that contemporary design would fit in with the other requirements where it has to fit in with the character of the neighborhood. In our downtown neighborhood plan, it very much emphasizes that we want to protect our historical buildings. And of course, this is across the street from Terracotta, which is a historical building. And so my only concern with the word contemporary, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this, is someone else comes in and uses the word contemporary, that can mean different things as opposed to what you've shown, which really does fit in with the character of the community. Again, going back to as our land use, we just have to go with what you're saying.
Sure, and I would have no problem taking contemporary out of the forms. What my interpretation is, it's a contemporary spin on a traditional forms. The traditional forms were what, I don't know if requirement is the right word, but with respect to form, the roof pitch, gabled roof ends, things of that nature were a part of the design. It was my client's desire from the beginning to do more of a contemporary design that has been found throughout the city of downtown Littleton in some of on the streets behind and in different places. But we quickly informed him through the help of staff that that would not be the case in this particular block. And so it is, taller windows, a little bit more glass, some change in materials that have a little bit more contemporary feel, because we want to appeal to as many broad of an audience as we can from their standpoint, and work within the forms that are required by the guidelines.
Totally get that. maybe not taking out contemporary, but maybe just saying, like you said, contemporary traditional, because that seems to fit exactly what you're producing there, as opposed to just using contemporary. Just my thought on making it fit with our design standards and guidelines.
I have no problem with that.
I don't have any other questions. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Could you please talk about the standards versus guidelines that Ms. Kuhn discussed during the staff presentation? Were there places where you were unable to meet a design standards but substituted design guidelines for those? Or do you feel that the design has adequately addressed all of the standards listed in the code?
Especially when it comes to the larger picture ones, height, setback, form, mass. I think we've met them all, and even given, like I said, given back some by directing traffic to the alley, which is not a standard necessarily, but is an enhanced improvement to that. There's a lot, I guess, in terms of the standards. The lighter colors, I mean, maybe, adding a little bit of darker colors and changing to a natural stained wood is something that maybe you don't see in Littleton, but we think, again, enhances the project. But I would say, in general, across the board, maybe some of the detailing is not as traditional, but people don't build homes that way. And I've gone to landmark and historic districts a lot of times, and there's one of the predominant opinions there, it should be built. When you're building a new structure, even in a historic district, it should be reminiscent of the time that it's built, not trying to duplicate something that was built 100 years ago, because that's, not the way we build things. I mean, we don't do double wide masonry walls with plaster on them that have no insulation. I mean, there's a reason for that. And so that also translates to the exterior detailing as well.
Okay, a couple quickie questions here. Let's see. Number one, I think you demonstrated what was the difference between the original proposal and this proposal, that I understand now. Did you have another neighborhood meeting for this current plan layout elevations?
No, we did not.
Okay. Was there a reason for not doing that?
Well, the simplest reason is it's not required, but that's not a great reason. The other reason was at the last neighborhood meeting, I would say we received fairly favorable response to our original presentation, this being a little bit smaller in scale, less, and so I guess didn't feel that it was necessary.
Okay. Let's see. I think you did clarify the walkway on the north and south side is what, 4-foot walk, and you said I think it was 5 feet from property line
5'2" to the property line of the foundation.
Face.
Yes.
Up to the foundation. Great. Okay. Fire department access. It looks like they can get in from the alley. Can they get into the front? They just bulldoze through the trees you show in the perspective, or is there no access from that direction?
Sure. I mean, they would never pull a vehicle into this type of situation. It's been my experience in doing a lot of projects like this. They don't want to put a vehicle in a position where you're that close to where if the fire compromises their ability to fight the fire. So they would park, and I'm going to get it wrong, but there's a distance, a fire hose distance, and if they can fight the fire with where they park in a certain distance, let's just say it's 150 feet, because I think that sticks in my head. But we had a similar project in Arvada. We talked about driving in there, and they're like, we would never pull our truck in between those two buildings.
Okay. It's done
from their own safety issue.
Okay. Last, kind of a wish. Do you have the original perspective of what I'm looking at here versus what you see today?
So this is the kind of side view. What you have here is the left side is the original, the right side is the proposal today. And you can see the higher gable at the very front and how it's reduced from the left to the right. The elimination of the third floor at that front elevation, third floor patio, and the ability to lower the gable. We changed some of the articulation on the side, and the sides actually we feel are also a little more enhanced where you can see the garage kind of pop-outs that were along that side. We have a lot more glazing, a lot more natural light into all floors of the building on the exterior sides, both north and south.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you. We'll now open it up to public comment.
You guys,
Excuse me? Okay. Let's see. If you haven't signed up to speak, you'll have a chance at the end to speak.
Okay.
You can leave that up
Is
if
that
you want.
a view you want? Or is-
Leave it if you would.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
That's great. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Wish you to be civil. When 30 seconds are left, we'll hold up a yellow card saying you have 30 seconds left. When your 3 minutes is up, the red card will show. Speak directly into the microphone. Please state your name and your address or your district number. We'll start out with Don Bronze, who is against the project, wishes to speak. I guess we're going to lose our perspective.
Thanks for shrinking it down. A little bit more, please. Yeah, thanks. Don Bruns, District 4. Good evening, Commissioners. I've highlighted here a few key phrases from the staff communication under proposed project. It's troubling that developers have now come to expect that this commission will relieve them from code setback requirements. Under staff analysis, the phrase "take advantage" signals alarm. Who is being taken advantage of by whom and to what ends? Staff further outlines that plans demonstrating that attention given to the required conditions allow variances if they don't impair the intent of the land use code and provide substantial benefits to the city. It appears questionable whether staff has not only shown that the required city benefits would be beneficial by the increased density, but what they would be specifically, and also that they would be substantial. Let me try to explain. Here is a Google Earth aerial looking northwest. You can see that the immediate environs surrounding the proposal are all suburban in character. Here's a ground level view looking at the site itself. It's suburban. Notice the small scale of the buildings and the treescapes looking north up, up Curtis Street, the same thing. Looking across to Terracotta, the same thing, small scale, and the character is definitely different than what is being proposed. The same thing looking down Curtis Street. So here's the renderings. The proposed design does not fit the suburban character of the immediate neighborhood. Instead, it is distinctly urban. It appears that staff not only has not demonstrated the positive benefits, but neither has analyzed the negative or adverse impacts that the development would have on the neighborhood aesthetics, social, cultural, neighborhood fabric, nearby businesses, and the city itself. The proposed design doesn't fit the immediate neighborhood because of its height and volume, the size, or actually the mass. The size of the reduced setbacks also crowd in on the pleasant adjoining treescapes. And it's, I said, sterile architectural design. You already talked about how modern it is. If the Planning Commission continues to push for this kind of urbanization, it will effectively ruin the distinctive character of downtown, making it no less distinctive than the sterile, soulless development for which neighboring communities are known. You could begin acting to maintain our unique heritage by saying no to this proposal. So what will you do? Some members of the Planning Commission and staff itself would have us believe you really care about community character. In fact, some who are running for council and some supported by members of the commission would have us believe that, but it's very difficult to believe in view of the council's or the commission's
Sir, we cannot
past
do any
actions.
campaigning.
So you have the rest of this before you. I would just urge you to say no to this. It really does need some
Sir, your
redesign.
time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. 3 minutes goes fast.
Next up is Pat Chadbourne. She's against the project, wishes to speak.
I live downtown, and so let me mention some things. First, I'm appalled by the concept that if you tear this building down, then the setbacks will match. You are changing by your intent to change. That is not code. That is not right. That is not why you are there. The reason why the setbacks are supposed to conform with the current design of the city is because that's the feeling we want to maintain. You don't design, you don't change for what it will be and what you think should be okay, or what the developer thinks is manageable. That's up to us, not them, and not up to you to decide what the future setback should be. That's appalling. No one I've talked to has ever agreed with that comment from any of you who make that on this board. It destroys character. The whole point of character downtown is the spacing between the buildings, to see the trees, to see the other buildings between them. It is not about how close can I get to the street. It is the space between them so you can see them and breathe. So Dawn is right. Character is there. You folks are supposed to maintain that. You're supposed to read the code, and so is staff to do that. I'll mention a few things. The CA residential mixed use is being changed to residential for market reasons. And that's not the intent of this district. The intent is to be partly commercial and to bring income in and to keep that character around Main Street. So no, you shouldn't approve this for that. The requirements for having residential so that you can work where you live, can anybody who works on Main Street afford this? No. This would have a benefit to the city if 2 of them were affordable or accessible houses. They are not. There is no compelling, significant benefit to the city to this at all. In fact, we have to maintain an alley now for 6 upper-class residents. No, that's not a benefit. That's a negative. That's an expense to the city, which, again, staff did not include. So, Planning Commission, you need to consider that cost to the city. That offsets, there's no benefit to this. There's no affordable housing. There's no housing for somebody who can work downtown or walk to RTD. This is not diverse housing. This is very specific housing for one group. The sprinklers, there's fires all over. They should have them. It's too full for even transformer pads. There's too much on this lot. I said that before, it's quite clear. And there's just a facade, a literal facade. The whole point of the downtown standards and the porches are to engage with people for all of the residents, not for 2 in the front who are kind of there to be a shade for the other ones. No, all the residents are supposed to have that, not a little sneaky sidewalk on the side.
Ma'am, your time is up.
Okay, so please deny this. This is not right for downtown Littleton.
Thank you. Cal is, let's see, for the project, wishes to speak.
Good evening, commissioners, city staff. Thank you, first of all, for volunteering your time.
Name and address.
Cal Murab. Sorry. Thank you for volunteering your time, for the city staff for working tirelessly for getting this project looked at. I have been in downtown, I came to Littleton 38 years ago and started the business. I believed in the vision of the city and the direction it's going in. And for the best part of 25 years, I've been a proponent of high-density residential. Let's not forget that Littleton, when it was founded 125 years ago, the population of Littleton wasn't anywhere as it is today. Littleton population is growing. We have to stay competitive with the surrounding areas. We cannot lose our populations and our workforce to the surrounding cities, Centennial, Iron Ranch, or Denver even, and Lakewood. and the others. Main Street is happening. There's a lot of energy. There's a lot of pedestrian traffic. It is important for us to keep the businesses, continue running business on Main Street, to keep our base strong and to support our city government. I believe this project and the developers, as well as the owners, have done a beautiful job in presenting this vision for future of Littleton. In the old days, yes, it was great, but the population wasn't anywhere as it is today. I urge you to support this program and move this project forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Cade Dunahall, I think, or?
It's Dunay.
Penmanship in Littleton needs improvement, as I always say.
Yeah, mine's pretty bad, sorry.
State your name and your address,
my name is Cade Dunahey, and I am here to show my support for the project. Keep this very brief. I am very interested in one of these places, and that's why I'm here. I've lived in Littleton my whole life, third generation. I own and run a business here, and I think this is exactly what Littleton needs. I think it's a beautiful project. They've done a good job, and I'd be proud to call this home. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that wishes to speak about this project that hasn't signed up? Seeing none. Applicant wish to add anything? I do have a question for the applicant, if you could come down a second. Question I have is concerning density. It came up in one of the public speakers. What is the density currently allowed, and what is the density you're proposing?
The density allowed on this site would be 15 units. It's 575 square feet of land per unit is what would be allowed, and we're proposing 6, which is substantially less than what would be allowed there. To do that, obviously, you'd have to do structured parking and things of that nature to meet other parts of the code, but from a density standpoint, the city of Littleton has already deemed this I don't know if I'd consider that high density, but a medium to high density site of 15 units.
Thank you. Anything else you wish to add?
No, I mean, when the points raised that it's not, not an amenity, I mean, again, when you read through the citywide plan on a dynamic Littleton, generate more opportunities for residents to live, shop, and play where they work, and to work, shop, and play where they live. Encourage housing that responds to changing demands in the local housing market. Increase housing diversity and densities to help enliven the streets and support the stores and restaurants. Incorporate the concept of complete streets into the city's efforts. Increase the walkability of neighborhoods and develop an inviting citywide pedestrian network. We're doing that by closing off a parking access and making it a more pedestrian-friendly avenue to downtown. Streets should be designed to provide for multimodal needs of vehicles, pedestrians, bicycles, and public transit. Bicycles and pedestrians should be safely accommodated in downtown's right-of-way. When you have cars, coming out, when you have cars parked and then you have cars pulling out in between those areas, those are less safe. This project will enhance that and make it safer. So I disagree with the assertion that it's not an amenity to the downtown.
Thank you. We'll now close the public hearing. I'll entertain a motion and then a discussion. Do we have a motion?
All right. So first thing, Carol, do you want to put your second amendment or condition is the right word? Thank you.
That was a condition for the site development plan, correct?
No, it's part of the motion. She wanted
me
it
just
part
to
of the
say
motion.
it
Was part of the
slowly?
motion?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, put it up there.
I can't put it up there, but.
Yeah.
All right, while she's doing that, I move to approve PC Resolution 24-2017 concerning the views at Curtis Street Plan Development Overlay located at 5630 South Curtis Street, case number PDO 17-0004 with the following conditions. Number one, at the time.
Hold on a second.
Oh, that was number 2. Okay. Number 1, at the time of the site development plan, additional setbacks and alternative building placement may be necessary to accommodate the placement of pad-mounted transformers to meet Xcel Energy requirements. And number 2, that prior to recordation of the PDO milers, the applicant shall make all minor technical corrections to the record copy of the PDO, and such correction shall be made to the satisfaction of the City of Littleton.
Have a second from Lynn. Discussion? Let's start down here.
Certainly appreciate the efforts that the applicant has taken to address the concerns that were heard at the last hearing. I guess my thoughts about this are that we're starting with closing off a curb cut, increasing on-street parking in downtown Littleton. Right now, the existing setback for the pedestrian really doesn't feel like it should be 23 feet. It feels like 0 feet because you're walking right next to a parking lot with no landscape buffer whatsoever. So one way to look at this is we're going from a 0-foot setback potentially up to a 14-foot setback that's pleasantly landscaped. There was some discussion about the mixed-use nature of downtown Littleton, and I really appreciate those thoughts. I do feel that this block in particular on the east side already exhibits the mixed-use character anticipated by the plan and by the CA zone district. Counting the 7 lots along there, approximately 6 of the 7 are commercial of some nature or another. Historic spa, the Graceful Cafe, Art Spark Brothers Construction, the tavern's parking, all of those are commercial uses, and if this PDO were approved, this would be a piece of residential within that commercial fulfilling the goal of mixed use.
Turned me off. Just one suggestion, and when we discussed with the developer about maybe changing it just from straight to contemporary, there's 2 places in their PDO where they say contemporary, but contemporary or traditional like he was suggesting. Again, that just goes back to in the downtown neighborhood plan where it talks about downtown historic resources shall be showcased, and development adjacent to the identified iconic structures should respect and not detract from their prominence, and also in the vision that downtown will make the most of its assets, and that includes historic structures. So I just like to preserve that character to make sure that terracotta is not detracted from by being something too contemporary right next to it if it's taken in a different verbiage. And I'm very concerned about the 14-foot, not based on the illustrative drawing, because the illustrative drawing is wonderful in that way where, you know, it's the porch and it goes back, but we can't count on that because, again, we're putting a PDO to something that, what if something happens and we lose it? And you've got the ones next to it that's a 20-foot setback right now. And you could have some variance in that line that is different from what the downtown standards and guidelines suggest. So that would be my biggest concern, is if we didn't get what is being shown here. And again, we're land use. It's not based on the pictures we're looking at. That's why I have my concern with that. Thanks.
John, let's go with you.
I think the current proposal is substantially improved over what was previously presented. I like the fact that the roof massing has been set back, and the visual look on the front setback is really much deeper than the 14. I don't have a problem with the 14-foot setback to the porch areas, with the foundation of the building being much deeper. And I think it's going to improve that portion of the streetscape with the vegetation and the architectural features presented. That's all I have to say.
As always, I appreciate comments from the public on both sides of the argument. Appreciate the staff presentation and applicant. I think that a project like this actually does enhance the character of downtown. I think that walkability to light rail for people who want to live in Littleton but work downtown would be enhanced by this. Retail follows rooftops, and this will help support downtown retail and businesses in Littleton, which I care very much about. And I do think that the diversity of housing stock in downtown Littleton, especially this close proximity to Main Street, will be enhanced by the project. So I'm in favor.
I guess I don't really have a problem with the setback. As we've discussed ad nauseum, the setbacks of the other buildings to the north and south are much closer to the street than the building that's currently there. And I would agree with Commissioner Reynolds that right now there's just a parking lot there and it's ugly, and the landscaping and face of the building is much improved over what's existing there now. The west side of the street is a lot of the buildings are even more close to the street than on the east side, and so that really doesn't bother me. I don't like the mass of this building compared to surrounding buildings. It's almost a 4-story building. I did like the rendering there compared to this one, where on this rendering I can just see the flat roof and the box-like structure. It just makes it more boxy to me and unappealing. But from the street, as a person's walking by, even on the other side of the street, it seems that it looks a lot better. So if you're not, nobody's going to be at the second story looking at the building from the front. The side's another matter, though. I just don't like it, and so I'm a little bit torn. But I go back to kind of our a meeting that we had a few years ago that where we denied. I will say that the architect and the owner, they did a great job. Improving this over the last time, and there's a lot of varying elements here. And that meeting that we had where we denied a not as good looking building turned into something much more unappealing, a la the Grove. This is much better than that, and really I think you guys have put a lot of effort into making the facade look nice. I'm still, just a little torn by the side mass. Just looks, at least on this rendering, maybe the color looks better, but I don't know. I'm still thinking.
You have a few minutes to think. Lynn?
I guess my only real concern, still with the fire department, I have no objections whatsoever that to the unit itself and to the development of it. My concern is fire access. It's kind of not a closed place, but it'll be a little bit more challenged without that curb opening. But I can also see the significant benefits of closing that curb off. Finding parking along Curtis or any of the other streets is tantamount to impossible at given hours. I don't think that the building will reflect badly at all on the terracotta. It's a similar design. It has the ridges and the peaks and such. It's just a little taller. And the fact that there's not a lot of parking lot pleases me, to be honest with you. Underground or under building parking like that is much more pleasant to look at than large, massive parking lots. So basically, I think that this development will be fine.
Just want to clarify too, fire code, the fire department, they will be involved in the site development plan review, and it must meet all of their requirements through to building permit issuance and beyond. Just to clarify, that would be when they would come in.
I'd like to second the fact that I don't want the building to burn down.
Yes.
We're all agreed on that.
Did we vote on that?
Is that an amendment? I'm not going to make a motion. I'll let Bruce do that. So he's good like that.
I'm happy to share.
I'll second it. It's much more fun to do that. Of all the places where density is supposed to go, this is where density is supposed to go in Littleton. Absolutely. What really kind of flipped it for me, I was really kind of stuck on the mixed use aspects of it. I agree with your comments. Identifying 6 of the 7 parcels down there are presently mixed use. We're talking about a very a good design, very nice design of the building. And when you look next to Cafe Terracotta, we got a 2-story brick apartment building that was built out of Soviet brick that we imported in 1960 or something like that.
Mid-century.
Mid-century modern or some version of that. But really going back to the downtown neighborhood plan, and I'm not sure if it is a goal, a policy, or a strategy, but within it, it defines residential mixed-use districts and specifically highlights this parcel there. It says the residential mixed-use district has evolved over time and has a variety of architectural styles. There are residential, office, and retail uses with many businesses operating out of former houses. The feel of this district is predominantly residential. There are 2 distinct areas within the district, downtown north and midtown. Nobody ever calls it Midtown. Midtown continues to evolve as new growth and development occurs. So specifically, this parcel is called out within this document as being there. And then there are other policies, other land use policies that this also goes through having residential and commercial uses while maintaining a diverse residential character and amenities, maintaining the district sidewalks, crosswalks, streets, landscaping, lighting, park connection to parks and neighborhoods, and goes on. So I believe this is an appropriate residential use within downtown. I believe it is an appropriate density. I think the design is consistent with what we're seeing in both the comp plan as well as the downtown neighborhood plan. And I'm leaning very much in the direction of for this project.
Yeah, I appreciate Andrew going through that. I think a lot of the criteria and with respect to the citizens who commented, and I agree that we always appreciate both the pro and the con. It's always good to weigh them out. But there are a variety of criteria that we have to balance the scales on, which specifically is what a quasi-judicial hearing is all about. As in the staff memo, the staff correctly points out that Code Section 10-9-5 talks about the purpose of a planned development overlay being to provide a procedure which permits more flexible site design and development than is possible under traditional zones while maintaining the provisions of the code. And essentially, the advantage of the flexibility of the PDO regs is that the proposed development must demonstrate attention to creative, high-quality design that's consistent with a development that reinforces and complements citywide and neighborhood design goals and objectives. I think this, as my associates have indicated, is an improved design. More to the point, I compliment the developer basically for listening or hearing the feedback we in council provided on the first go-rounds and proactively incorporating those to make a better project than was originally proposed. The issue here in some respects is that while, either Planning Commission or Council doesn't get unlimited bites at the apple. We can have a project come in, and if we don't like it, we can kick it back. And then it's incumbent upon the developer, and a good developer will do this, will do what you guys are doing, which is, okay, we heard you, and we're going to try to modify the designs and come back with something that's a little bit closer to what you collectively as the city would like to see done. And it's not a binary equation. It's you know, to the people who would like to see strict interpretation, and it's all or nothing, it's either we get 100% of the loaf or we decline it. Here we're talking about getting 4/5 of the loaf. And the alternative, if we turn this down again, is, again, use by right in this area is an extremely dense project that legitimately could put 15 units in, and council doesn't see it, planning commission doesn't see it, you know, Bob's your uncle, it's done. So this is definitely what the PDO interpretation is intended to accomplish, is that we get a better project than we might get under use by right. And in exchange for what we're giving, which is essentially a bit of a setback reduction over how it's interpreted according to basically what staff has indicated is in the code, we don't get a massively dense program. And more to the point, we get something that the community has said they really, really do want, which is owner-occupied housing diversity, which we haven't honestly had in this community for a long time. There's been an extended amount of negative reaction to the apartments, and so getting, or apartment developments over time, but getting owner-occupied in this area is in fact exactly what's in the comprehensive plan when it says encourage housing that responds to changing demands in the local housing market, allowing every generation and income group to call Littleton home, and increases housing diversity. Lastly, I think it's important to note that the neighborhood plan talks about the existing character of the historic downtown neighborhood, or the old downtown neighborhood. And it says existing character, not necessarily historic character. If council wanted it to say historic character, it could have been written as historic character. But the existing character of that neighborhood, as Andrew mentioned, is in fact changing and has already changed a lot. This is not out of character with what is happening in that area at this point in time. And in all likelihood, and we haven't talked about this at all, is it's in all likelihood, it will improve property values for the other parcel owners in the vicinity, which is no small consideration either. As a result, I'm going to support this motion.
I'll start out by saying, well said, Bruce. This is a much better design site layout than the original proposal. That's the wonderful thing about a PDO process, where we can, and the public can voice their concerns, and obviously the applicant took those up, including eliminating the pipe columns, getting in the way of the driveway, scaling back the height, improving the setbacks. It's far better design than some of the other projects going on in the downtown area. The PDO allows us, and the city, to have an effect on the design. This is a mixed-use district, but that doesn't mean that this site needs to be mixed use. The setback relief, which is the only item they're asking for, doesn't bother me. Most of it is for open porches, which enhances the facades. Let's see. The existing building also that's to be demolished skews the numbers abnormally, in my opinion. I also applaud the perseverance of the applicant. I do believe there's enough traditional form in the design to make this project work. It doesn't, as the applicant mentioned, when you're working in an historic district, the historic people will say, don't try to match something that was done 120, 150 years ago. Complement the district, but don't be a slave to the design of 150 years ago. Lastly, Bruce said it better than what I would say. Residential is allowed in the CA district. The district allows 40-foot height limit, no setbacks, minimum open space, far higher density than what they're asking for here. This is our chance to get a decent project, to have a say in the project, and I will support this project. We have a motion and a second. Time to vote. The votes are in.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you and good luck. We hope you build soon. Staff reports, please. We'll still be in session, so if you could leave quietly, that'd be great. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually have 3 updates for you this evening. So launching right into that. First, just to let you know, tomorrow staff is presenting to City Council in a study session a proposed scope to start a review of the downtown design standards and guidelines. So depending on that direction tomorrow evening, that will be on your agenda at your next meeting, and I will let you know what we're doing for that project. So that's number 1. The second is about the Bellevue Corridor Planning Project. As you know, the first public meeting is this Thursday, the 26th, from 6 to 8 p.m. at the St. James Presbyterian Church, and that is at 3601 West Bellevue Avenue. You all are invited to attend. This is the first public meeting, and the intention behind this meeting is really to communicate with the public, the community, the neighborhoods over there, to really start creating the vision around the corridor plan. So that's the intention of that meeting. And then once that is done, just a second, again, we will bring to your next Planning Commission meeting an update from that and the next steps around that. And I see 2 questions, so however you want to.
That was first.
Will there be?
How and who were invited to the Bellevue Corridor meeting?
So it is a community meeting, so anyone is invited. It's posted on the city's website, and we did send out invitations through Nextdoor to the neighborhoods along the Bellevue corridor.
David, you had a question?
Will there be refreshments?
David has priorities.
Yes, yes. Yes.
Let's keep things in the proper perspective.
exactly. Yeah,
So you all are invited to attend if that works for you. It is noticed as a public meeting.
Who's going to facilitate the meeting?
City staff,
Okay. And in particular?
community development staff, so myself, Dennis Swain, Mark Behrens, and Ryan Thompson.
Okay.
And the last update is about your next meeting, which is on November 13th. So in addition to it'll be a study session. We do not have any cases pending for that meeting. So it will be the 2 items we just talked about, plus we will be talking about the sign code. We will be moving that from the building code into the zoning code. So give you an update about that, and we're making some changes that will be coming forward. And then we're also going to be talking about what we're calling right now, unless someone has a better name for it, the preliminary project plan. So those are the 2 zoning code discussions, plus the Bellevue corridor, plus the design guidelines. Okay. So with that, I'll take any questions, and that's my report.
Any questions for staff? A couple of things. I want to thank everyone for coming, who did come. I think most of us came to the Council Planning Commission breakfast meeting. I think we moaned and groaned a little bit, cleared the air. I think I have a sense of hope for organization as to how to proceed with our studies, corridor studies, small area studies, light rail station, et cetera. Also, Littleton was something in the top 5 of something. Could you?
Top 5 traffic jams in the metro.
Let's drop that, okay? Do you know what that was?
You know what? I can't remember. It was something about one of the best places, small town, small city in the U.S., second to live in the U.S.
Yeah. A friend of mine who was listening to a TV report and in Columbus, Ohio, and noticed it and asked if he could move out here. So
Tell him he couldn't afford it.
no, buy my house at 50 cents on the dollar. Yeah, he couldn't afford it, but it's one of the top 5. Let's see, and then you did mention the Bellevue neighborhood meeting. That was the other thing. So, any commissioner comments? Thank you all for hanging in there with no break tonight, so we got through it in reasonable time. Thanks for coming. We're adjourned.